Hello, everyone. Have you heard the expression, listen to that still small voice? So it's an expression that I've heard quite a bit as I was developing my spirituality in attending Agape, my spiritual center. And I know Reverend Michael, the leader and founder of Agape, used to use that phrase quite a bit. He doesn't use it as often as he used to, but it's one that still stays with me. So I thought it would be a good conversation for us to have and, to see and hear what you all think about it. And joining me in this conversation, as always, is Tiffany Lee. And as I have been saying recently, she is our licensed practitioner, licensed spiritual practitioner in training. So
Mhm.
she's in classes and has a little bit more sort of scholarly perspective on the conversations that we have. Um, so she's joining me in this discussion on that small, still small voice and um, how that affects me is, and it's not really a voice that I hear. And if I look back on one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, and that was when I felt like in my early morning walks in my neighborhood as part of my physical activity, I was followed one time. And that small voice, it wasn't still, it's still only in that it's like a whisper, sort of like a whisper. Although it wasn't really a voice. Anyway, it told me, don't don't walk past that van, that truck. Don't walk past that. Um, and it wasn't really like I said, it wasn't really a voice, but it was a knowing. I mean, I couldn't put a volume to it or anything, like a small voice or whatever. It was just a knowing that
It's
entered in my head at one point.
yes, it's the no. It comes as a knowing. Yeah,
Because I and
and
I know that you talked about it in traveling down the what is it, the 405 or whatever, and that voice said to you, I don't know if it was a still small voice, but said to you to get off at a certain point, which you thought, I mean, it wasn't your usual exit.
right.
Remember?
No,
Yeah.
that was it. That was not a quiet voice. That was literally like they kept changing my spirit, kept changing my directions on the phone, and it kept saying, "Get off, get off." And I was like, "Why is it telling me to get off?" And and I thought like, "Oh, maybe it's rerouting me because of traffic." So I eventually, because it was insistent, consistent, like get off, get off, get off. And so finally, I kind of was like, "Okay." And maybe the voice came in where it was like, "Okay, you need to listen." So I got off. And then when I looked at the freeway and it was at the downward point going through the mountain and there was no traffic, I was like, why did you tell me to get off? And right then, my brakes gave out on me and I had to drive off the side. So if I would have stayed on that freeway, it would have been, I mean, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
My brakes really, they fell out. When AA came, they were like, who did your brakes? Because they literally just fell out. So they weren't put in properly.
Oh my God. So that's that voice, that knowing
That voice
saved
can
your
come in
life.
many ways. Like I said, that one came through my phone. And then it was like, you need to listen to this, you know. But the knowing, that's when I have my downloads. It comes in a knowing. And it's like it's not really a voice, but it could be
Yeah.
considered like a voice talking to you,
Yeah.
you know, or like, oh, like aha moment, as if you knew this, but you didn't. It's new information. Um, Yeah, it can come in so many ways, but it is all coming from spirit, the
Yeah.
universe, you know.
And so that was the next thing I was going to go to. So how do we know to trust it? How do we know it's not, how you see on those, I don't know, movies or TV, they'll have a person facing some sort of dilemma, maybe. And on one shoulder, this angel person speaking. And on the other shoulder, they have the devil, with the
Mhm.
horns and the tail and the whole thing. How do we know that that knowing isn't the devil, isn't the dark side? You know, I
Yeah.
I
So, are you done?
I think I know what you're going to say, but just go ahead and say it.
Okay. Because the dark side, the shadow side, I think is the ego. And I think once you get one from experience, we can ask every day, give me guidance. And if we really pay attention, we're getting it all the time, every day. They're
Mhm.
always our angels, our guides, they're always with us. Spirit's always with us, always talking to us. And then so's our mind, so's our ego, always with us, always talking to us. So
Mhm.
that's what you have to differentiate with. And let's not criminalize the ego because we need the ego to be here on in this incarnation. However, it's the ego is the gosh, the ego is I'm thinking because something came to me recently about the
Mhm.
ego, and I just remembered that I had a download about it, but I'm trying to remember it. So that's why I had to pause.
Okay.
But it'll come to me. But we do need the ego. We just are not supposed to let the ego run us because the ego, our persona of who we are, is the knowledge is from the outside. It comes from school. It comes from church. It comes from our parents, and it's not necessarily truth. It's what is constructing our life. It's what's constructing our, some people like, our play. Like, we
Yeah.
create our lives. We can call it the play. We can call it the avatar, but that's what the ego is part of. And it's changeable. When people say this is my personality, like, that's the personality you created or your ego's created. Everything
Yeah.
can change. So when we're making decisions, it's kind of like we have the ego and then we have our soul, spirit. And that's where we can say the devil or the angel, right? The most
Yeah.
obvious way would be, what's the most loving choice?
The most loving choice. Yeah. That's what I was gonna, yeah, ego is what I thought you were gonna say. And then it's coming from a place of love from your heart, right? From
Right.
deep, deep down inside. Because what occurs to me is, and I did a small uh kind of clip of talking about the moral crisis that we're in as you know, in the world.
Yeah.
And recently, I mean, it's been coming up in different forms and formats or whatever. Um, but recently it was, in the political arena, it was the redistricting, and it sparked this Louisiana resident going and providing testimony before his local legislature about redistricting. But he was bringing up some things that are going on in the world that seem to be, I would think, immoral, like withholding aid to people, who are in need of it. I'm
Hmm.
talking about domestically with like food stamps and the healthcare and all of that. And then worldwide, um, I know he mentioned in his testimony, holding hostage to folks in Zimbabwe and Zambia for their minerals, and um, and the U.S. withdrawing the the aid that they used to give to folks who were in need of it for health reasons, and and then asking the question, how is that, where do you find that in your Bible? And so I'm thinking that these folks who do these things, they may deeply believe, maybe they believe, I don't know, that um this is okay.
Yeah.
Like like there is, like they somehow, and use the Bible to justify it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
because so they believe it, um, and I'm thinking that because they believe it because they haven't gotten in touch with, their heart self, what is it?
Spirit. Their
Yeah,
connection is spirit. They're just
they're
not,
connected.
they're not connected.
Exactly. A connection to
Yeah.
spirit. That they really have it, but somehow they believe that what they're doing is okay. How,
Right.
how could that be?
I'm so glad you brought that up because that was one of my downloads this week in
Oh,
understanding. Yeah. Because as you know, I have conflict in my own family
mhm,
and trying to understand how could you do these things? How could you be so mean? How could you be so heartless? Um,
right.
God showed me that, Spirit God showed me that if you're on a different consciousness, if you don't even know, if that's all they know, it's kind of like if it's like, I know I'm not going to do certain things, but if I make a decision to be mean to someone,
Hmm.
I know I made that decision and I can know it's wrong. But if a person's at a lower consciousness of service to me and they're not connected to spirit, where spirit lets you know, like, no, we're all connected, we're all interconnected. And spirit is also listening to your heart. If you've cut off your heart and you're only listening to ego and you're getting all your logic from ego, then really they don't know. And if they've always been there,
Yeah.
there's no difference.
There's
Like,
no
I mean,
difference.
there's
Yeah.
kind of like, well, how would they know any difference? Like, so with my brother, he's an alcoholic. He's an abuser. He's just mean. And he knows he's mean. Everyone tells him he's mean. Uh,
Mm,
and he doesn't really have any friends. And sometimes I wonder, like, this is proof why you don't have friends because you're mean. But the thing is, he is who he is and has always been. So there's no difference. It's not like he had a lot of friends and he was nice and decided to be mean and now he doesn't have friends. So
yeah.
he's been at that conscious level forever and doesn't know any difference. And
Uh,
that's where when Jesus says, forgive them because they know not what they do, we have to think like that. Because if
okay.
we're trying to understand from our way of understanding, we're
Yeah.
not going to. We're like, I wouldn't do the things that he does, and if I choose to do that, I know I'm choosing to be in a lower consciousness. I'd be choosing to be mean to someone. I choose to hurt them, and it wouldn't make me feel good. Whereas for him, that's just who he is, where he is in his development, and he doesn't know any different.
Any different.
He just,
There's no frame of reference beyond what he's already experienced or what he's,
yeah, yeah. So with that, I mean, that's a particular understanding of when we
yeah,
look at people, how they do certain things and why they do certain things. You can eventually say if this is how they've always been, that's just where their consciousness is
yeah,
because they're not connected. So we can't go to them and be like, that's mean. Why are you doing that? And they'll be like, and I've done this with my mom, who's a narcissist, and she's like, I'm not mean. You know what I mean? I'm like, what do you mean you're not mean? The things you do. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Sometimes I'm just truthful. I tell people what it is from her truth. You know what I mean? Or like, I didn't like this anymore. So I let people know, or da da da. But that's who she is. And it's all that's ever been who she is.
yeah.
Um, and that's on their their development. That's on
Yeah.
their soul. That's so.
So that helps a lot to understand where, how these actions can take place and how they justify those actions.
Mhm.
And I don't know whether they can point to verses in the Bible or not in the way this person who was speaking before the legislature asked them to do. Tell me where in the Bible this is okay, that this kind of behavior is acceptable. But 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 yeah, if they're in a certain place in their consciousness, in their development, then they're not gonna see anything any different.
Right.
There's nothing you can tell them. You won't be able to tell them anything either, because that's where they are.
And it's exactly, that's where they are. And I know, at least for me, um, it's not. someone telling me things, it's when spirit tells me something. So it's not coming from head down.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from heart up, you know. So when I have my downloads, it's downloads are literally like transforming, like because all of a sudden you have this new thought process. It's embodied in me, and then you see things differently, just like what I just shared with you. You know,
Yeah.
I have it's a little bit freeing because instead of me thinking I can talk to my family and do this and that, no, like spirit showed me, they're like, there's no reference for them. This is who they are. It's not my job in that sense. It's kind of like it's their
Ah,
job. It's the God in them.
yeah.
God is there. Spirit is there. They have angels. They have everything, but they're not listening to that voice right now. The ego is louder than the voice. The
Yeah.
spirit, is, you know, in them. Now, spirit can get loud. And spirit does
Mhm.
get loud. I know when I was younger, I'd wake up and to a Tiffany would sound like a booming voice. I'd be like, "What? Like what was that? Who just woke me up?"
Oh.
So I
Oh,
always laugh when people talk about that small voice
yeah.
because I was like, it didn't start with me being a small voice. It was like Tiffany. I was like,
Oh my goodness.
who's talking to me? And it reminds me in the Bible of who is it that who was the character? I don't know how well you know the Bible, but is it Jacob? No,
I don't know the Bible that well, so I'm not going to be able to tell you.
it's a story. All man, I'm trying to remember the name. It was a prophet. He went to go stay with. Um, he was a child. His was it not Abraham? Abraham's son, I think it was.
Mm,
Sent his son to go stay. He said he would be for God, for the Lord. So he went to go stay with like priest or something like that. Jewish priests, so whatever they're called. But to be raised there to be a priest, basically.
mm.
So he's a child, he's sleeping, and he heard God's voice was waking him up. Isaac? I don't remember, but anyway, I always think about that story when I hear the voice. I'm like, what? I haven't heard it in a long time. It comes much softer now, and I
Oh,
do feel like spirit is going to get in touch with who he wants to get in touch with eventually. And it could be so many ways, you know, but
yeah.
I think it's less effective coming from other humans than from that voice.
Um, because my inclination is wanting to help to raise their consciousness. And I feel like it's my role to do that, and help them get into a place where they are more God-centered, that they are listening to their heart.
Right.
But it's not my business to do that. Is that what you're
No.
telling me? That
Yeah,
it's not
it's
my
not. It's
role,
not
my
ours. That's why.
place?
Yeah, because then what we're doing is we're judging them, right?
That's
And
true. That's a judgment for sure.
it's a judge, and then it's also saying that we're better than. And the reality
Ah,
is we're not better than because we're all one. Now we can be at different levels and we can do things differently, and some things hurt others more than that, you know.
mm.
But um,
So we can't call it out. I mean,
we can
can't we
call it out. No,
call?
we can. We
We
can
can call it
call
out.
it out, but it's the way that you do it. Because when you point, you know that saying, when you point at someone, you have to be pointing back. You got to be conscious of the fact of that when you point something out on someone, it really does. It automatically makes people look at you more judgmental too. So
Mm,
if people thought about that when they're talking about someone, like, oh, they're talking about someone, the reality is everyone's going to look at you more judgmental too. So
true.
how are you showing up? And that's how you raise it. You know, you concentrate on you
Mm-hmm.
and your connection with spirit. And because everything's energetic, when you're raising your vibrations, when you walk into your room with your high vibration,
Mm-hmm.
that's how you're going to, without saying anything, that's how you're going to affect the energy of everyone else.
Ah.
And people don't respond to criticism. They don't respond to someone criticizing them. They
Yeah.
respond to love. And so
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to walk in being like, I love you. You know, they'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
this girl's crazy. But if the energy is exuding love, is exuding a higher frequency, then people are going to be drawn to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you have the influence, because if someone comes to you, then they want to know what do you have? How do you have this peace about you? How do you have this joy?
Mm.
It's like when you go into a party and you're in a
Oh
really
yeah,
good mood, people are drawn to you, right? If you,
that's right.
yeah, and they want to be around that, and it's going to create good news. You go into a room, party in a bad mood, people are going to be like, "Why did that person come?"
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
that's how you help raise the frequency, is by being in that higher frequency yourself.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it does become, I can see that now, how it becomes contagious, you
Hmm.
know, because like you say, people will be drawn to you, and then it will help maybe to raise their frequency in some way, you know.
Right.
Um, yeah, okay. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad we had this conversation because I am quick, and I think I have been accused of that, being a little self-righteous, and that's not good. That's not good
Yeah.
because people repel that. They don't, like you say, they don't want to be criticized, and then who do you think you are?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. Um,
Because
but
we
I,
all have, we're still all human. We're still all like,
yes,
we're here to grow. We're here to
yes.
learn from
Mhm.
our soul. We just have to remember it's not all what we learn from the outside.
Yeah.
We have a connection to the infinite wisdom, to the mind. You know what I mean? And that's where we want to get most of our knowledge. We want to be connected to that. Like the knowledge we get here is like how to work your computer, how to do the stuff here, which is all good because we chose to come here. But
Mhm.
but we need to still stay connected to God. That's really what is going to give us the best experience here. And so that's where um like I've said to my mom and my brother, like, you have no friends. Don't you want friends? And they're like, I have friends. I'm like, so me saying you don't have friends, one is going to put them on the defense. And I've said it, so what I'm talking about is my new awareness and knowing, that God showed me. Like, is that going to make them, because me even saying that is being judgmental. Like, why can't you see that you don't have friends? Well, if they've never had, and they've only have acquaintances, they only know a few, that's all they know. They don't know what it's like to be loved by a lot of friends and have, so they're not missing it, put it that way.
Yeah, right.
But when they see me and they see my friends and they see my life, then they can see
Hmm.
something different.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then that's their option to
True.
be like, I want to make some changes in my life. I want to know why I don't have this that does look better. I do want someone to love me. I do want this or that. It's their option
It's their
to
option.
start looking at themselves.
Hmm.
And no one can look at themselves and say, I want to make changes, and spirit say no. Spirit's gonna be like, yes, here we are. Been waiting for you to turn inward. Been
Yeah,
waiting for you.
yeah. And then, yeah. Yeah, I can see how yeah, that makes sense to me. That can happen. Um, Rather than the other way. Because then, like you say, people get defensive. They don't want to be criticized. They don't want to, and they're not in the place where they can even see
Yeah,
would be, put forward to them. They're
right.
not there yet. And you're right. I mean, we are given, um, what is it, free will to be able to make those
Make the
choices.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so it's just a matter of us elevating our consciousness and presenting that to the world for them to see. And then maybe, maybe something will spark in them what they see in us to want to elevate to want to raise their consciousness
right.
rather than, me like pointing my finger. Don't you know better than because that's my first inclination. The ego side comes out, and that's my first inclination. Don't you know how
Yeah,
bad this
you
is?
do.
But it's
It's the
Yeah.
state of the world. That's why we're in the state of the world. That's what war is
Yeah,
about. That's why religious, I mean, most wars are kind of almost based, it's money or religion, right? And
that's
the
right.
religions want to be right. Everyone wants to be right, and they want to be more right than the other person. They want to call the other person wrong. And so
Yeah.
that's what that is. So don't beat yourself up, but now you know it's not
Yeah.
the way fighting. I mean, who wins a war? You know what I
Oh,
mean?
I know.
No, there's people are dying, and
Yeah.
and we are. I do believe that we are, as a collective, raising the consciousness. It's more and more people are becoming aware, and more people are saying, no, we don't want this anymore. But of course,
I'm
we
seeing
have
it.
the old regime still in place, and they're doubling down, knowing that more people are not wanting it,
Yeah.
but they don't want to lose control. So they can't, this is kind of coming into, they're doubling down because they know they can't lightly keep that control anymore because people are saying no, no more.
Yeah.
You can't have control over us. You can't have, people are becoming more autonomy. They're reconnecting in the masses. We have a lot of the collective and doing that. So the people that are not, that are disconnected, that are used to having the type of control they are, the reason why they're so openly blatant about it at this point is
Mhm.
because they know they don't have the same persuasion over the world that they had
Right.
before,
Yeah.
because everyone's waking up, because everyone's becoming at a higher consciousness where they can look and say no, no. And so they know people are looking at them saying no, but they're looking for their people, the people that are going to allow them to stay there and
Yeah.
enjoy it as much as they can. It's
Yep.
end of an era and it's obvious. And the new era is, people working from their heart, working more from love.
Yeah. Yeah, I am seeing that a lot more lately. I
Yeah.
mean, the last month, even more so than
Yeah.
before the month. So that's heartening, that's encouraging and inspiring. And we just have to keep it up to make sure that we are shining our light, from our heart center, God consciousness, so that it becomes even more contagious,
Yeah.
it gets out there even further. Yeah, that's really inspiring. Okay, so those of you who are paying attention to this and listening to this, you know, have you heard from your still small voice recently? And I guess I should stay away from that term because it's not necessarily a still small voice. It
Sorry, Colin.
it's it may be a loud booming voice. It may be a whisper, and it's not even a voice. I don't know that you can hear it, but you just know it. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just a knowing. And you know it's from God consciousness when it's heart-centered, when it comes from a place of love. So what's been your experience about this? Share that with us in the comments below. We want to hear from you. I know that we're not the only ones that experience this. Like we were saying, that we know that there's a blossoming of a consciousness that didn't exist before. And we want that to continue. And also subscribe, hit that subscribe button. And on behalf of Tiffany Lee, I'm Gwendolyn Flynn. We look forward to seeing you next time